Hi everyone, it's Maria, and it's been a long time. I'm sorry about that, but homeschool got started up and we had some family things that were important, so I chose them instead of doing BookTube YouTube channel. So I am back for a while. I have several videos planned and I'm really excited. I kind of had myself a little sabbatical and figured out what I wanted to do, but I could not stay away during nonfiction November. So all of you just get me. Anyway, I will go ahead and share with you the books that I read last month. I think there's a few other ones that I read and just didn't keep on the shelf, and I have not been using Goodreads to track everything because I'm just trying to, stay afloat with other things. But these books I did not want to not tell you about. So the first one was How to Break Up with Your Phone. Catherine Price wrote this. It's a little kind of short book, but I found it really helpful. Not only have I read several books about how to break up with your phone, I have failed at breaking up with my phone on several occasions. This is actually probably the best one that I think I've read on breaking up with your phone. And she does it from a stance of phones aren't horrible or anything, but you need to kind of unplug to figure out where you find your use with it. And she makes some really great arguments for why that your phone is eating up all of your extra bandwidth. And I appreciated her reasoning. I've read, again, Digital Minimalism and several other books about this, but I just really appreciated how she kind of maps out a plan. Because when you're in the middle of a breakup with something that's important to you, it's good to go in with expectations of what it's going to feel like and what to do when you inevitably want to go crawling back to your ex that has not been good for you, right? Like, that's a thing that I think a lot of people can relate to. So I love the whole breaking up with your phone because there's a plan laid out for when you are going to be itching to get back to it, and filling it with other spaces, putting some parameters around it, because sometimes you have to live with your ex or near your ex. I remember I went to a residential high school and I had to live with in the same dorm building as somebody that I had broken up with, and it was rough, but because we had the same friends and the same everything. Your phone you still use probably for business or family reasons, and it's hard. So I appreciated this book. I think it's a worthwhile pickup. The next couple books I read were because I had to preach a sermon, which was another reason I stayed away from here. I preached a sermon on Halloween Sunday on fear and what to do with it and how to use it as a tool instead of using it as a paralysis problem. And so these two books, I mean, Brene Brown, I've read several of her other ones, but this is the newest one that I hadn't gotten to yet. Bravening the Wilderness, and you can see how marked up it is. And Mastering Fear. This one's by Brene Brown. This one is by Webb and John David Mann. And I loved both of these books. I really got a lot out of my sermon prep, which is the whole point. I think you always try and teach on something that you actually want to learn about. And these books both, for different reasons, complementing each other so well. Mastering Fear is more about what to do with fear as a tool. I guess they both kind of talk about it. I want to kind of summarize a little bit. Brandon is a Navy SEAL who does fear training work with other companies and that sorts of stuff. He talks about one of his friends who's really afraid of swimming and how he got him in 1 week from his ultimate, like, he had not even get in the water, to jumping off and doing a cannonball and swimming laps within 3 days. And the big difference between those couple days was that a lot of times when we're afraid, we're imagining the worst that can happen because we don't understand it. And so he talks about fear analysis as understanding you're going to have fear. You're going to experience things that go wrong. And so if you plan for those things and you train on what to do when they inevitably happen, you have a better plan to go forward and move in the middle of your fear instead of just using it as a reason to stop. There's a lot of other nuggets in here. I can't even begin. I mean, there's so many Post-it notes. But this, if you are a person, if you are a human, and you've ever been afraid or are trying to figure out what your next steps are, this is great. It also pairs well with Tim Ferriss's TED Talk on fear setting. I really highly recommend checking that out as well. And then Braving the Wilderness by Brene Brown. If you haven't checked out her Netflix special called Courage, I really recommend it. Any of her books are golden, but I especially liked I bought this one, which shows you how much I really liked it. She has a little post-it note for permission to do something, and I think she really recommends giving yourself permission to do things, to recognize that even if you fail mostly, but you have a little bit of progress, that's good enough. And the thing that most was important about this book, I think, was in this day and age where everybody's arguing and everybody's afraid to say what's true to them and step into a relationship in a conversation that is going to be tough, where you know you're going to disagree. This book was instrumental in my talk about how to move into those scary, unknown spaces where you don't know if you're going to come out on the other end of the relationship intact or not. And she's just amazing. So I really recommend this book, even if you don't feel like you're a fraidy cat. This is a good one for dealing with hard to navigate relationships, dealing with the political climate, the social climate. And she'll probably say some things in here that are going to be hard on both ends of the spectrum, regardless of where you fall. And I love that, because that's the point, I think, growth, right? I also read this book, Everything is Figureoutable by Marie Forleo. I don't even remember how. I think I listened to her on a podcast, and apparently she's a big deal and does a lot of talking about how everything is figureoutable. I actually want to get the t-shirt, Everything is Figureoutable. She said that was her mom's mantra going into things that were hard. And I think it's a good one for this day and age, where you look at the big things that need to get approached. Climate change, bringing a country back together, dealing with cancer, dealing with parenting, dealing with yesterday or today. And I think this is a really good book to just tell you that, yes, take a breath. Everything is figureoutable. It might turn out differently than you expect, but it's worth moving forward. So I really appreciated this one. The other two books that I'm going to tell you about were audiobooks that I listened to with my kids, and they were both amazing. Last month was Hispanic Heritage Month, and we listened to two different audiobooks that were, I can't say good enough things about them. They'd be good reads anyway, but the audiobooks were done really well. The first one was Sal and Gabby Break the Universe by Carlos Hernandez. This is put on by Rick Riordan Presents, which he's been doing a lot of really exciting promotional work for diverse authors talking about diverse mythologies, and I am all here for that. Carlos and Gabby are Cuban Americans who kind of have some of that lore mixed into the story. And they both go to a gifted arts academy, I guess is what it's called. And he's a musician. She's more artistic, a very kind of nerdy. She reminded me of Hermione Granger. But what I loved about this, not only does it talk about dealing with grief, because he lost his mom and she was in the middle of losing her baby brother. It talks about alternate universes and physics, as well as having families that look differently than other people's families, as far as how many people are parental figures. And it was just so good. But the thing that really made me want to cry was Carlos was a type 1 diabetic. And that's not like the biggest part of the story, but when it's brought up and mentioned and plays into a couple of minor plot points, and we were listening to it with my husband and my kids. He's a type 1 diabetic, and you don't often see that represented in books. And watching my husband see himself represented, and hearing my kids being able to be like, oh yeah, that's like when Dad does this. It just was like, it just touched me in a really good way. So I really recommend it. The sequel is coming out next year, so we will be definitely getting that one. The second book we did was for our Brave Writer curriculum, and it's called Mercy Suarez Changes Gears by Meg Medina. Also a really great book. It talks about kids who, again, she's one of the only Latinas at her middle school. She's moving from elementary to middle school age, so that the tricky stuff that comes with it. They bring up ancient Egypt stuff because they're studying it in school. It touches on bullying. It touches on dealing with a grandparent who has Alzheimer's and what that changing relationship looks like. An older brother going away to college. There were so many things that were important and talked about in this book. It was done in such a wonderful way. And the Brave Writer curriculum that we're using for school also has a guide that goes with it, curriculum guide, and a party guide. So we've been doing book club parties with our badge club that we created last year. It's a whole nother video. But we had such a fun time doing the book club discussion with the kids for that one. So I really recommend that. Even if you don't have kids, it was a really great book. So that's what I read in October, at least the really good stuff. I read some other stuff that wasn't amazing, but I didn't want to share it with you. So I will talk to you all later. Bye.